Hey y'all, welcome back to day 4 of the brand alignment sprint. I'm so excited to share with you today's topic. And I have a little story. I was reflecting on this topic and I thought about a time when I was in high school. So today we're going to talk about the difference between brand strategy and your brand reality. My name is Aubriana and I'm the founder and principal consultant at Black Unicorn Creative. And our main work is making sure there is alignment within businesses and organizations from their identity and who they say they are to how they operate and how people experience them. We do that across industries, worked with small businesses and nonprofit organizations and larger businesses. We love it all. We love it all. Everyone comes in with very unique challenges, and I just am so excited to dig into those. And that kind of leads me into my story and what I was reflecting on when I was reviewing this outline and giving it some meat. When I was in high school, I was in this program called Project Seed, and Project Seed placed high school students in college labs so that we could get research experience to put on our college applications. And I did it my junior and senior year, I believe. And I was placed in a research lab in UNC in the chemistry department. And I was researching nanoparticles that disseminated nitric oxide. Nitric oxide. So that it was like for therapeutic reasons, right? Nitric oxide does things in the body. One of the main use cases was going to be like a coating on like knee and hip replacements so that the body wouldn't reject the replacement, right? And so I feel like just with my background in science and biochemistry was my favorite. When I approach my work, it is very much, the practice is very similar to the scientific method. And if you don't know the scientific method, that is where you have a hypothesis.
And part of it in my work,
30,000 visitors
in a brand.
See what happens when technology goes haywire? That's why you shouldn't have so many tabs open, Aubriana. Thank you, Aubriana, for that. Anyway. Scientific method is when you take a hypothesis and then you set a set of conditions, and then you have your materials, your methods, like how you're going to go through testing that hypothesis, and then you have your results, and then you draw a conclusion and have a discussion about it, right? And so when it comes to strategy and brand strategy specifically for me, I approach it with a very similar methodology, right? So when we talk about brand strategy or strategy in general, it is not something that 100% to be true and that you're just going to execute on it. That is a plan. That is a to-do list. If you know all of the conditions and all of if you're certain, if you have a lot of certainty around what it is you're executing, that is a plan. And it's okay to have a plan, but that's not strategy. Your strategy is your hypothesis, your theory or your thesis. You are saying, if what we know about this arena is true, then this is how we position ourselves for success. This is how we beat out our competitors and whatever success looks like for you. And so brand strategy itself is a integrated set of choices that you make that will position you in the arena that you want to play in, and will position you to with your best opportunity to win in that arena. And so a lot of companies invest in brand strategy or strategy work, but don't necessarily know how that translates into the brand reality. How do you go from strategy to experience? How do you go from this is what we believe to be true to actually watching that play out and then saying, okay, this is how we are going to build out the experiences for our customers and our employees based on that belief. So there's a difference, right? There is a difference. It's not always easy to make these things translatable, but that has to be part of the process. And that's why stopping at a brand identity is, I don't recommend it without having some continuity, saying, okay, yes, you're getting some strategy. This is how you're going to show up. How does that translate into the decisions you need to make, the priorities you need to have, and how does that factor in the capacity that you have to deliver on what your strategic position is? And so making that really clear within the business is difficult. And that is where I like to offer the most clarity. So brand strategy itself is what you want to be known for, right? We talked about some different definitions of brands in the last video, and kind of what that means as far as brand as business. But brand strategy, it really includes your positioning. How are you going to show up in the market in comparison to everyone else? I love doing a 2x2 matrix, being able to plot where the competitors lie. What are the two axes or dimensions that we want to play against? I just was thinking of this example of like footwear. You know, being a footwear brand and being stylish, right? If we played on those two axes, many times people think Nike, Adidas, Puma, right? We could place those on these axes: footwear brand, stylish, and like two contrasting views of what style might mean. But we're not going to put Nike and Converse in the same playing field. Yes, they are both footwear. Yes, they both have style. But they achieve different things. They are meant for different purposes. Converse is not necessarily associated with performance, with athletics. But everybody needs shoes still, right? Well, I won't say just athletics. It's very much skater streetwear, right? But it's not track and field football, you know? And so when you're able to position yourself and see where you want to play, strategy is choosing those dimensions that you want to position yourself against. And choosing those dimensions are going to indicate to you who your competitors are. It's going to give you more clarity around that anyway. It's going to include your positioning, your promise. You'll hear me if you if you've been around long enough. You'll hear me say, we work in the gap between your brand's promise and your ability to deliver it. And so brand strategy is the promise that you are making to your key stakeholders. And I know that feels like such icky, like jargony language, but the people that interact with your business. And it's not just your customers. It's investors. It is strategic partners. It is your employees. It is your vendors, right? What promise do you make those people? What promise are you making to your community at large and to society? That promise is part of your brand strategy. It's what sets you apart. It is what gives you that differentiation between, the florist on West Street and the florist on East Street. What is the difference between the two? How do they interact within their communities, within all the individuals that interact with their business? How do they show up differently? That differentiation is what is that intentional choice. What playing field are we entering? Does one florist cater to B2C, where they're just, like, hey, we're going to do weddings and we're going to do birthday parties and, Mother's Day, really that just person to person? Or are they going for corporate contracts and saying we're doing florals for big events? We don't have the capacity to do smaller person to person florals because we need all of our resources for these larger events. They are in different playing fields despite being the same business type. Your brand reality, though, is how you actually show up. What is that experience like? How are people treated? How are people treated when they interact with your business? How do you make decisions? What are the values that you've said are so important? And how do they influence your decision making? How do they influence who is responsible for the goals that you have set and the results that you get from your work? How consistently are your experiences delivered? And how does your team carry that baton? Since we're going Nike athletics, we're going to just have athletic metaphors this whole video. You're welcome. How does your company actually show up? I remember one day being in the lab, and I understood at a very considerable level what I was trying to achieve. I would load these nanoparticles in a flask. I would infuse them with nitric oxide. I would then set different conditions to say, okay, if they're in this solution, or if they have this much heat or that much heat. Like, those were the conditions that I was setting for those experiments. And then I would put them in another chamber to see how long it took for the nitric oxide to be dispersed from those nanoparticles. Let me tell you, very often there was a large discrepancy between my theory, my hypothesis, and the reality that I experience, my results. And so much of my work was figuring out, how do I influence the results that I'm getting? How can I plan differently? How can I tweak that process to give me different results? If you have a brand business and you are getting results that don't align with what you believed to be true about the market, or be true about what's important to your customers or your employees, this is not a video to like upset you about that or make you feel bad about yourself. This is an experiment. You have chosen a huge experiment to provide value for someone, whether it be a product or a service. In that experiment, you have to be okay with being a scientist. You have to be okay with the risk and the tweaking and having to change the conditions and deal with that change like the leader you are. The gap between your brand strategy and your brand reality is where trust starts to erode. And that trust is within the relationships between you and your customers and the relationship between you and your team. And so if you are not acknowledging the changing reality with your strategy, then you're going to lose confidence. Your team is going to lose their confidence in your direction setting and how you're leading your organization. But if your strategy acknowledges the reality and acknowledges the tweaks that need to happen, strategy is not stagnant. If your strategy hasn't changed in 6 months, I mean, the way that the world is going at this rate, strategy is changing often. It is a dynamic and fluid approach to your work. If it is not changing based on the lived reality, based on people's lived experiences, then you're going to lose that trust. And it's going to be harder to enact change without building that first. So I'm curious to know what experiments you have been playing with recently, whether it be high level at the brand strategy level or something more tactical, more connected to the plans and what you believe you have certainty around. Drop that in the comments. Let me know what experiments you have been conducting lately within your business, and I look forward to continuing to see you in these daily videos. All right, see you in the next one.